everyone, and welcome to the 5 Bytes podcast. I'm your host, Rory Monahan. Coming up on this week's episode, Microsoft is reportedly testing a free version of Office. Also, the move to Rust is apparently causing upset in the Linux community. And major players in the AI market space announce new releases. For this and more, keep listening to this episode of the podcast, which of course, as always, is brought to you by my sponsors. And that includes Numescent, the inventors of the first and only cloud-native container management platform for Windows desktops. And also brought to you by Master Packager, who make an application packaging software that helps you build packages that end users love, enterprises want, and the Windows OS needs. If you enjoy the show each week, we have these awesome sponsors to thank. And now for some news. The Verge is reporting that Microsoft has started testing ad-supported versions of Office, which include banners that are permanently visible at the side, as well as 15-second video ads that play every few hours. Microsoft is also forcing users of this version, which is free but contains ads, to store documents in OneDrive, with support for local file storage disabled. Word is missing drawing and design tools, line spacing, and more, and the free version of Excel doesn't support add-ins, pivot tables, or macros. PowerPoint is also reportedly missing support for dictation, custom slideshows, and other features. So, it's still a little bit of an upsell with this free version. But hey, if all you need is creating a document and editing documents in Word or something like that, it sounds like it's not a bad option. This is just in testing now, however, with the Microsoft rep telling PC World, quote, Microsoft has been conducting some limited testing. Currently, there are no plans to launch a free ad-supported version of Microsoft Office desktop apps, end quote. So yeah, it would be interesting to see if they actually do make it available. Obviously, this is not going to impact on enterprises because enterprises will continue to pay for 365, but you'll probably still have some maybe remote employees who use personal devices, and this may be a topic for that. And hey, you also probably require Office on your personal devices, so even if you're in enterprise IT, this is still topical. The Register has reported that Docker has decided to delay its plan to limit image pulls, which is the downloading of container images from Docker Hub, by 1 month, with the limit now coming into place on April 1st instead of March 1st. All paid customers will continue to have unlimited pulls, while those with personal accounts, which are currently free, will top out at 100 image pulls per hour, which is good because when the limits were originally announced, it was going to be just 40 image pulls per hour, which, honestly, for a personal account, even 40 is pretty good. I would imagine you're not going to go past that, but what do I know? Previously, there was a plan to impose monthly pull limits of 25,000, 100,000, and 1 million on pro, team, and business accounts, but this no longer appears to be the case, as these will continue to be unlimited. Docker had planned storage-based billing, but that's also been suspended. The cost of maintaining a reliable, consistent service at scale is cited as drivers for these changes, but the Register suggests that Docker, which is valued at more than $2 billion, has had difficulty finding a business model that works for it, which could also play a part. Microsoft is now testing a fix in Windows 11 build 26100.3321 insiders in the released preview channel for Windows 11 24H2 for a long-standing known issue that is breaking SSH connections on some Windows 11 22H2 and 23H2 systems. Obviously, this is only entering preview now, so it's not an immediate help to those in enterprises. Until a fix is generally available, however, Microsoft says affected users can temporarily fix these SSH connection issues by updating access control list permissions on affected directories. And I'll share a link to this article that links out to information on that if this is still impacting you. But, it's been going on for a while, so I'd imagine you already know about it at this stage. It's worth noting that BleepingComputer.com suggests devices running Windows 11 Enterprise, IoT, and Education editions were the only editions confirmed as affected by Microsoft originally, but They also indicated that Microsoft is now investigating whether consumer customers using Windows 11 Home or Pro editions are also affected. The US CSET and the FBI have said attackers deploying Ghost ransomware have breached victims from multiple industry sectors across over 70 countries, including some critical infrastructure organizations. The intelligence agencies added that the list of 70 countries includes China, perhaps indicating this is not a Chinese nation-state actor. Industries impacted include healthcare, government, education, technology, manufacturing, and numerous small and medium-sized businesses. This ransomware group leverages publicly accessible code to exploit security flaws in vulnerable servers, and they target vulnerabilities left unpatched in the likes of Fortinet, ColdFusion, and Exchange servers. To defend against the Ghost ransomware attacks, network defenders are advised to make regular and off-site system backups that can't be encrypted by ransomware, patch operating system software and firmware vulnerabilities as soon as possible, focus on security flaws targeted by the Ghost ransomware, and there's a list of CVEs with this article that I'll share. Segment your networks to limit lateral movement from infected devices, and also enforce phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication for all privileged accounts and email service accounts. All of these, other than maybe those specific CVEs that you need to patch against, are just kind of common sense, and you should be doing it anyways. In fact, even patching those CVEs makes sense because I see that a lot of those vulnerabilities are from as far back as 2009 and 2010. So if you don't have those patches installed, I don't know what you're doing. Two different exploits for an unpatched Parallels desktop privilege elevation vulnerability have been publicly disclosed, and they allow users to gain root access on impacted Mac devices. Unfortunately, the security researcher who published the exploit claims they discovered the potential bypasses soon after reading another researcher's write-up of a vulnerability and exploit that was supposedly mitigated, and informed Parallels of this in June 2024. This new exploit suggests the mitigation was not complete, however. The researcher who just published his exploit, Mickey Jin, says the vendor promised to look into his report, but despite 3 subsequent requests for an update, the last one was on February 19th of this year, Parallels did not respond. So unfortunately, it seems like they were unresponsive, and this researcher decided to publish the exploit because they were not getting a response. And unfortunately, when an exploit is published, there's typically attacks using that exploit on average within 7 days. So hopefully this is something that gets patched immediately. Wireshark version 4.4.5 has been released, and this has mostly just bug fixes, like fixing an issue where Wireshark is crashing when clicking on a column or title header, for example. But hey, new version of Wireshark, so if you're using Wireshark, get to it. Camtasia version 2025 has been released, and it features an AI noise removal feature, an automatic captions option, picture-in-picture camera preview, and avatar generation, which I don't think looks great, but everything else, it seems pretty cool, and also more. So if you're a Camtasia user like I am, you'll want to check this out. In an interesting turn of events, a New York law mandating internet service providers to offer broadband for $15 with download speeds of at least 25 megabits per second or $20 per month service with 200 megabits per second speeds has spurred legal efforts in other states to guarantee affordable services for people with low incomes. So far, legislators in Vermont, Massachusetts, and California have proposed laws inspired by the New York requirement. AT&T have stopped offering their 5G home internet service in New York entirely instead of complying with this law. And I just saw that this law in New York was being contested this week, and it looks like the court has upheld the legal mandate for ISPs to offer these cheaper rates. I can only talk about my experience living in Arizona for the better part of 9 years. I would have to do a dance every single year where I'd swap internet service providers because they would only offer like a maximum of 40 megabits per second download speed, and this was in like the 5th largest city in the US. And they would upcharge, like once the year went past, the price would go crazy. It would go like $80 plus a month for 40 megabit per second download speeds. It was ridiculous. Meanwhile, when I moved to the US, originally I was getting 80 megabits per second download speeds in Galway, the fourth largest city in Ireland. It seemed crazy to me that that was the case. So personally, having experienced what was on offer in Arizona, I applaud this. There should be a flat rate of a cheaper internet service because people depend on it so much now. You shouldn't have to jump providers every year to get a fair rate. Ars Technica had an interesting article about a whole lot of tea, as the kids call it, being spilled in regards to adoption of Rust in the Linux kernel. This is a development I've covered in the past. In fact, it has been slowly worked into the Windows code set too. If you've been listening to the podcast, you'd probably already know that, as it's considered a safer alternative to previous languages like C. While there was much love for Rust in recent years, it has been reported that Rust enthusiasts have been left frustrated with stalls and blocks on their efforts, with the Rust for Linux lead quitting over what was called non-technical nonsense. Linus said at the time that he understood it was slow, but that old-time kernel developers are used to C and not exactly excited about having to learn a new language. Over the last 2 months, things have reportedly been getting a little tense in the Linux kernel mailing list. While people have been voicing their upset, Greg Hartman added to what Linus had said, saying that Rust can and should enter the kernel, but no one will be forced to deal with it if they want to keep working on more than 20 years of C code. But earlier this month, Hector Martin, the lead of the ASHI Linux project, resigned from the list of Linux maintainers while also departing the ASHI project, citing burnout and frustration with roadblocks of implementing Rust in the kernel. Rust, Martin maintained, was essential to doing the kind of driver work necessary to crafting efficient and secure drivers for Apple's newest chipsets. Christoph Helvig, maintainer of the Direct Memory Access API, was opposed to Rust code in his section on the grounds that a cross-language codebase was painful to maintain. Linus called out Hector Martin for airing his grievances publicly, and even went far as to say, quote, "How about you accept that maybe the problem is you," end quote, which that's not cool, in my opinion. And Christoph Helvig went on to write up an even longer take on the matter, even referring to mixed multi-language allowances as a cancer. He also stated that Linus had in private said that he absolutely is going to merge Rust code over a maintainer's objection, which suggests that, that contradicts the whole, hey, you don't have to use it if you don't want to, and, we respect those who want to continue with their code that's over 20 years old. Helwig himself apparently objected to a pull request in all caps, saying, in all caps, remember, "did not touch the DMA layer at all," end quote. With Linus saying he likes Christoph and that Christoph has called him out on his BS and he needs people to call him out on his BS. But now it was his turn to call Christoph out on his. Honestly, the way I've interpreted this, I love the drama of it, but Linus was wrong for being what I would say is a bit of an arse for publicly calling someone out like that. And hey, one bad turn deserves another. This Christoph fella, putting in all caps, did not touch the DMA layer at all, to suggest that, he didn't want to have to do this Rust, and now you're making changes like this with Rust. Stay out of his lane, basically. Pettiness on top of pettiness, I guess. Anyway, I found it interesting. Anthropic has launched its Claude Sonnet version 3.7 model, which introduces hybrid reasoning, a new approach that allows it to respond quickly and also to pursue more intensive step-by-step thinking like human cognitive ability. One of the standout features, according to neowin.net, is the precise control over the thinking process. API users can now specify the level of thinking budget required, allowing them to balance speed with cost with output quality. It has been developed to specialize in many different areas, including working with coding and front-end web developments, the latter which I find pretty interesting because obviously some other models, like some of the mini models from OpenAI, also have a focus on coding and mathematics, but front-end web development is interesting. And in Canva's evaluations, Claude consistently produced production-ready code with superior design taste and drastically reduced errors. Pretty interesting, considering Canva's kind of a leader in their space. Claude 3.7 Sonnet can be accessed with all Claude Free, Pro, Team, and Enterprise subscription tiers, and through the Anthropic API, Amazon Bedrock, and Google Cloud Vertex AI. All paid subscriptions receive extended thinking mode. And I don't know about you guys, but like for testing out these different models, I tend to use like an aggregator. I'm starting to think that maybe I should be trying these out each individually directly. It would be time consuming, but I wonder if there's something being missed by using a different service kind of as a front end or as a means for kind of corralling all these AI services. OpenAI has shared that they now have over 400 million weekly active users. And that figure marks a 33% increase over the last 3 months, over 2 million enterprise users, which is about double the number of enterprise users from last September. OpenAI lost $5 billion in 2024, and the company also spends $700,000 per day to run ChatGPT. So, yeah, it's a company that consumes a lot of money and a lot of resources, but is growing at a staggering rate. OpenAI also announced just this week that it's rolling out Deep Research, its web browsing agent that creates thorough research reports to all of its paying ChatGPT users. So ChatGPT Plus, Team, Enterprise, and Education subscribers will get 10 Deep Research queries per month. OpenAI's Deep Research was previously only available to ChatGPT Pro users, and those $200 a month tier users now get 120 Deep Research queries a month. A public preview of Gemini Code Assist for Individuals, which is a free version of Google's AI coding assistant, is now available. Gemini Code Assist for Individuals is globally available and powered by Gemini 2. It supports all programming languages in the public domain, and importantly, it's optimized for coding, similar again to some other models out there. Google fine-tuned the Gemini 2 model for developers by analyzing and validating a large number of real-world coding use cases, and as a result, they say the quality of the AI-generated recommendations in the Code Assist is better than ever and ready to address a myriad of daily challenges that developers face. While other popular free coding assistants have restrictive usage limits, well, maybe not as restrictive as they were before this week, with usually only 2,000 code completions per month, Google will be offering unlimited capacity with up to 180,000 code completions per month using the Code Assist. To get started, you can install Gemini Code Assist in Visual Studio Code, GitHub, or JetBrains. According to a survey by Future Publishing that featured 510 participants in the US and 518 in the UK, approximately 27% of their US participants are heavily inclined to use AI-powered search tools like ChatGPT as conventional tools like Google seemingly fading away into the horizon as more and more start just relying on those generative AI services instead. And a separate study quoted by Gartner in this WindowsCentral.com article I'm referencing seemingly corroborates their findings, citing that AI-powered tools like ChatGPT search will take over 30% of online research queries by 2026, potentially denting Google search's dominance. So, yeah, I mean, ChatGPT by 30% in 2026, well, Future Publishing suggesting in the US at least, it's already at 27%, so that seems even a little conservative of an estimation compared to what Future Publishing has found. And yeah, I mean, I think this makes sense because, of course, you'd ask a generative AI that can search and kind of extrapolate results across many different sources and kind of provide them all in one easy to read place rather than having to troll through and go to multiple websites. WindowsCentral.com reported that Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella was dismissing some of the AGI milestones that I've actually covered on the podcast over the last maybe 3 weeks. It appears he took part in an interview or event with the Microsoft AI CEO Mustafa Suleyman. And on the topic of superhuman intelligence in AI, Nadella indicated that we need to establish trust with the new species first. According to the Microsoft CEO, quote, "Before we claim it as something as big as a species, the fundamental thing that we've got to get right is that there is real trust, whether it's personal or societal level trust, that's baked in. That's the hard problem," end quote. Nadella admitted that the legal approach to the ever-evolving AI landscape could be the biggest rate limiter. He indicated that this would become more apparent as AI tools gain broad adoption and humans delegate more authority to them. As AI agents scale greater heights and seemingly take on complex tasks, Satya Nadella says there's a threshold they need to meet before being allowed to run a Fortune 500 company, as an example. For example, the permissions of the runtime environment in which the AI is operating. You need guarantees that it is truly sandboxed and it's not going outside of its sandbox. Nadella claimed the AGI milestones don't necessarily dictate AI progressions, stating, quote, "Us self-claiming some AGI milestone, that's just nonsensical benchmarking hacking to me," end quote. During the event, he highlighted Microsoft's broader plans to double down on building compute infrastructure to help train the next big model, which I think will be interesting to some because they had announced that they were putting the brakes on some data center construction projects. So this may be an indication that maybe they're going to be ramping that up again. And also on the topic of Microsoft, former Microsoft CEO and founder Bill Gates was recently interviewed by Patrick Collison, I believe who's one of the founders of Stripe, and listed AI as one of the four scary things Gen Z should worry about, but at the same time painted an optimistic picture of how AI could be used to fill in gaps such as in medical research to help speed up developments. There was also suggestions of moving to a 3-day work week for humans over time as AI steps up and takes over some of the work. I think that is very optimistic. The way this world seems to have worked in the past, at least, say with automation in manufacturing, that did not lead to a better work life for people. On the less optimistic side of AI, the New York Times published an article about concerns around AI chatbots being used for therapy, with the American Psychological Association raising the alert for a need to regulate bots for the use case. It has been suggested some AI services endlessly validate the human interacting with them, which can lead to them validating someone's notions of self-harm. There has been reports of teenagers who have unfortunately done just that after using AI services like Character.ai. So certainly not all that glitters is gold. And while people are worried about what AI could do in terms of like destruction of humanity in future as it advances, in the short term, there's also dangers such as this. But now this episode's scripts, tricks, and tips. Just one this week to keep things short because the episode's running a bit long. But Andres Boran shared that he has written a PowerShell script to help list the Microsoft Authenticator registration for MFA and Entra ID using the Microsoft Graph API. So this is one that could be definitely very useful if you want to run those queries for Authenticator and MFA in your organization. But that's it for this episode of the podcast. Thank you all so much for listening.